Welcome into the Commanders Report live show. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Thank you guys for joining me here on a Wednesday to help us kick off the 2026 offseason for your Washington Commanders. Now, obviously, it's been a very long and disappointing 2025 campaign for the Washington Commanders, and now we embark on a journey here that's going to include a lot of change. We're going to get a couple of coordinator hires. There's obviously going to be a lot of movement on the roster this year with Adam Peters calling for more speed and youth on this roster moving forward. There's a lot of free agents. There's going to be trades. There's going to be free agency signings. There's going to be cuts. There's going to be restructures. There's going to be obviously some draft picks involved this offseason, and hopefully at the end of it all, we can construct a roster here in Washington that is deserving of the talents of quarterback Jayden Daniels and head coach Dan Quinn as he tries to build the next Super Bowl champion here in Washington. Now, on today's show, we're going to kick off the offseason with the latest news and rumors surrounding the Washington Commanders, some conflicting reports on what is going on in the Commanders building after the firing of Kliff Kingsbury that we'll talk about today. Also, the Commanders have officially announced an interview for their defensive coordinator opening that we'll discuss on today's show. Then we'll get to our annual award shows. The award show, the Commies, will be our second segment of the day. So the team's MVP, offensive and defensive players of the year, offensive and defensive rookies of the year, coach of the year, comeback player of the year, and play of the year. See my picks for all of those categories later in tonight's show. Then also we've got our live mailbag. So if you guys have a question that you guys want to get on the show tonight, you guys can do so for free. All you have to do is put your question in the live chat room with hashtag Commanders somewhere in the comments. So for example, you go down there in the live chat and you guys put hashtag Commanders. Then after that, you put in your question. Do the Commanders sign a wide receiver in free agency this year, or whatever question that you guys have? Or if you want to guarantee your question gets on the mailbag today, you guys can super chat any dollar amount. If you don't know how to super chat, it's the little icon that looks like a dollar bill down there in the live chat room, and you send in any dollar amount you want along with your question, and we'll make sure your question gets on the mailbag this afternoon. And now let's bring in our producer. Mr. Ponzi is here, and Ponzi, it was a very interesting day in Commander Nation yesterday where Kliff Kingsbury and the team officially announced that they are parting ways. And, you know, it was definitely a disappointing 2025 season on offense for the Commanders, Ponzi, but I also think it wasn't all on Kliff. There was a lot of injuries on that side of the ball, including to the two most important players on the offense, and Jayden Daniels, who missed more than half of the games this year, and then Terry McLaurin, who himself almost missed half the season as well. I just don't think there's many OCs that would have, thrived in that situation that we had this year. And I do think Kingsbury's offense fits the play style of Jayden Daniels quite nicely. I mean, there's a reason why apparently Jayden and a bunch of players are upset that they are parting ways with Kliff right now. I mean, I really don't know what, caused this tension in this relationship. Apparently it's between Adam Peters, but there's other reports about Dan Quinn. And, I think a lot of it has to do with the philosophy rather than the results. I think the results
this
season, it's going to be bad no matter what. If your injuries, you go past 11 starters on offense and defense were out for a prolonged period of time this year. I mean, also, that bad. They were around league average in most of the key categories, and they were, top 5 in red zone percentage. This offense was not, dog crap this year, and that was with all those injuries that you discuss. Yeah, and I really don't understand this move at all. To me, the smart move was getting rid of Joe Whitt Jr. Everyone knew that was going to happen. Yeah, everyone knew Joe was done. But, Kliff really didn't do anything that necessitated, a firing. I don't know about that. I don't know if it's because they want to, run that Shanahan offense. Yeah, I think, like you said, I think it's a philosophical decision here where they're we want to run more under center and we want to run the football more and all this different stuff. And Kliff is I'm an air raid guy. I'm always going to want to put the ball in the hands of my quarterback, especially when we've got a guy like Jayden Daniels. And I think there's just a separation between what Dan Quinn and what the front office wants from a schematic perspective, and Kliff Kingsbury, who wants to be more spread. He wants to be more in the shotgun and in the pistol and do those sorts of things. And honestly, I think Kliff's offense maybe fits Jaden Daniels better than the Shanahan-style offense, but it certainly seems like we're going to get a Shanahan-style guy here in Washington, because Dan Quinn had the most success he's ever had in his head coaching career with Kyle Shanahan himself calling plays for him. They went to the Super Bowl that year with Matt Ryan. He won the MVP that year. And, of course, Adam Peters had a ton of success in San Francisco. So, obviously, head coach and GM, have a lot of success, and they like that Shanahan style of offense where you're under center a lot of play action from under center. And Kliff has always been an air raid guy where he's in shotgun and in pistol, and that's what he likes to base out of. And it just kind of clashed philosophically, and I think that's probably why they agreed to part ways. But I think the players are pissed off for a reason, and I think that reason is Kliff's a pretty good play caller, and his style of offense I think did fit with what Washington wanted to do with Jaden Daniels.
My whole question, Sperry, is if your players are doing good in the scheme that you already have, why get away from that?
Well, they didn't do as well this year, and then, because of that, they want to shift gears, and they want, if this was once again like a top 10 level offense like it was in 2024, obviously they'd be sticking with the same offense. But it seems like Adam Peters was kind of waiting for, the first bad year or first mediocre year of this offense so that he could say, all right, we're switching to Shanahan style now. It just kind of seemed like that's what he wants. And because of that, Kliff is the one that gets the boot, unfortunately, at least in my opinion. I know a lot of fans don't like Kliff, and obviously the Shanahan-style offense is, responsible for a lot of the higher-end offenses in the league. So my main concern with it is Jaden Daniels has never played an offense like that, and you're going to be asking him to completely, master a new offense heading into a huge year 3 with a bunch of new players. I feel like the continuity would have been the better plan of action here, but obviously what's done is done, and it's going to be an adventure to see what this new Shanahan-style offense is going to look like here in Washington. Now, I want to see who's in the chat. Who are the real ones that are with us here on a Wednesday evening? Type those me's in the chat for a shout-out if you've liked today's show. We've got over 100 people watching live, but only 18 people have liked the show. We got to get to at least 40 likes here before we get into our first segment today. All right, we got T-Rose here. We got John Masood in here. We got Eon. We got King Loso in here. We got Clarence Pittman. We got Cosby. We've got Marvin in the chat. We got Dylan McCann. We got Bentley. We got Caesar. We got Georgia. Who's all here? Type that or click that thumbs up icon for me real quick, guys. We got to get to at least 40 likes before we get into our first segment today. We got M. Marlowe. We got Edward. We've got Caesar. We got Hype Scepter or Spectre. We've got Richard Barker. We've got Joe Sanderson. Got Gideon Sink. Come on now. What do we got here? We got Jeffrey Lake. We got Gideon. And we're 2 likes away. Can we get 2 more likes here? Then we'll get into our first live segment today. We got Rick, we've got Dan, we've got Joe, we got Gideon, we got Richard, we got Hype, we got Caesar, we got Christopher, we've got Kelly Hodges. All right, there we are. We're at 40 likes, so I appreciate your guys' support. We're going to get into our first segment right now, the latest news and rumors surrounding the Washington Commanders. A lot to talk about today. Then we'll get into the Commie Awards here for 2025. I know there wasn't a whole lot of positivity to go around this year, but we want to highlight some players that maybe deserve some love here, and then we'll finish up today's show with our mailbag. Again, guys, get your questions in with hashtag Commanders in the live chat, or you guys can super chat to guarantee your question gets on the show this evening. All right, man, let's get into it right now. The latest news and rumors surrounding the Washington Commanders are coming at you right now. Welcome into the Commanders Report. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and today we have a lot to talk about here as rumors are flying all over the place in Commanders Nation after Washington decided that they are moving on from both offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury and defensive coordinator Joe Whitt Jr. just yesterday. We'll start out today's show by talking about the Commanders, who ended up firing another coach since our last video. Also, the Commanders have announced their first defensive coordinator interview request, and it's a very interesting name. I can't wait to reveal reveal who that is later in the show. Also, there's conflicting reports surrounding the Kingsbury firing and who was responsible for Kliff ending up parting ways with the Washington Commanders. And then Adam Peters discussed earlier this week about the offseason strategy and what fans can expect from the Burgundy and Gold this offseason. Make sure you guys stick around and see what Peters had to say earlier this week. But before we get into the content today, make sure you guys click that subscribe button because we got a bunch of great upcoming content here on the Commanders Report that you're not going to want to miss. Cut candidates, trade candidates, a perfect offseason plan is coming up here soon, weekly mock drafts here on the show, and then also breaking news in the offseason. We put out a breaking news video just yesterday when they fired Kliff and Joe Whitt Jr. We're going to have a bunch of those this offseason because, frankly, they need a complete overhaul of this roster, and I'm fully expecting that to take place during the offseason this year. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And we'll start with the top news story of the day here, which is that the Washington Commanders have fired their offensive line coach, Bobby Johnson, after 2 years with the team. Obviously, he was formerly with the New York Giants, got fired there as well. And guys, in my opinion, this was the correct decision, all right? I wasn't a big fan of the hire in the first place because I thought Bobby Johnson was one of the worst offensive line coaches in the league with the Giants, all right? But he comes over here to Washington, and, pretty much all the new guys that they have brought in and they have expected to develop haven't developed at a high level, including and especially first-round pick from last year, Josh Conerly Jr., who had a really rough rookie season this year. And, plain and simply, as a first-round pick, developing him is a top priority heading into 2026. I don't think I would have trusted Bobby Johnson with the development of Josh Conerly Jr. heading into his second year based on what I saw from 72 this year at right tackle. And I'm glad that they're moving on and finding a new voice in that offensive line room. And the top guy on my list, as it's going to be for every team looking for a new offensive line coach in the league, at least in my opinion, is former Atlanta Falcons offensive line coach Dwayne Ledford, who, of course, is now a free agent after Raheem Morris, their head coach, has been fired there in Atlanta. But Ledford was hired by actually Arthur Smith in the previous regime. He was formerly a run game coordinator in college, made the jump to offensive line coach in the NFL. And that offensive line in Atlanta, they've done a fantastic job developing a number of young players in that group. And that's been one of the better offensive lines in football ever since Ledford took over. So, I think that that's the guy that I would want if I were head coach Dan Quinn. And because of Quinn's connections to Dan Quinn or to Raheem Morris, I would say that he has a little bit of an inline road to try and get Ledford to the Washington Commanders. So that's the guy that I would keep my eye on. Now we'll shift our focus here to the defensive coordinator search, and the Commanders have already put in their first interview request, and it is for former Las Vegas Raiders defensive coordinator Patrick Graham. Now he's technically still under contract with the Raiders. That's why they have to request for him. But after the recent firing of Pete Carroll, I'm guessing whoever the new head coach in Las Vegas is going to be, he's going to want to bring in his own people. So it's very likely that Graham is going to be allowed to talk with the Washington Commanders. And personally, I wouldn't mind this hire. I really wouldn't. Now you might be saying, but Jack, the Raiders defense stinks, and they did this past year, and frankly, they've sucked for a little while now. But honestly, I've been an admirer of the play calling that Patrick Graham has had over the last several years because he's a very multiple style guy, and he crafts his defenses around the talent that he has. Now, he hasn't had a ton of talent in Las Vegas. They haven't given him nearly enough talent over the last several years outside of Max Crosby, but he's one of these guys that, is not beholden to a philosophy or anything like that. He's somebody that has come from a very diverse coaching background, and he knows a bunch of different schemes, and he tailors each team's scheme to the players that they have in the locker room. So that's something that I think is a sign of a really good coach, and, Graham hasn't really broken out yet as somebody that's considered a quote-unquote elite defensive coordinator, but he is somebody that I think is well-respected in the NFL, and I would personally, accept as this team's next defensive coordinator. Some other names to watch. The big name that is being linked to Dan Quinn is Raheem Morris, the former Atlanta Falcons head coach, plain simply because Raheem was the defensive coordinator for Quinn in Atlanta when they were working together for the Falcons. So they obviously know each other quite well. They have a great relationship. Gus Bradley used to work with Dan Quinn in Seattle. They helped to build the Legion of Boom defense in Seattle with Pete Carroll, so that's going to be one that might get connected. Al Harris, who's currently the pass game coordinator on defense for the Chicago Bears, really, really close with Dan Quinn as well. He was actually up for the defensive coordinator job potentially when Quinn was hired 2 years ago. He ended up going with Joe Whitt Jr., but Harris was one of the candidates he considered. And then Jeff Ulbrich, who worked works for Raheem Morris, as his defensive coordinator in Atlanta is also somebody that could end up getting the job here in Washington. So what say you guys? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Would you approve of Patrick Graham as Washington's next defensive coordinator? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. Just a second here. I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Polymarket. Well, I'll tell you about our sponsor today. Simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comments. It's time to challenge the status quo, and Polymarket is now live to help us do so. You can be a part of the revolutionary alternative to sportsbooks with our special invite code. Download Polymarket's new app now via the special link that is in the description and comments to unlock exclusive early access and a free $10 in your account with the invite code chat. Polymarket is a prediction marketplace that lets you make trades on the outcomes of sporting events. And as you guys can see on screen right here, you can even buy and sell within a game with live trading. Polymarket has the lowest fees ever. You trade against other people, not the platform, and you can cash out anytime and react to momentum swings within the game. You are in control. It's legal and available nationwide in all 50 states on their iOS app right now. For this weekend's wildcard action between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Houston Texans, the Houston Texans got 59% here, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are at 42%. Which makes sense because the Houston Texans have won 9 straight games, and the Pittsburgh Steelers don't exactly have the most dynamic offense going up against the league's best defense. $10 free is waiting for you. No card, no deposit, nothing right now with Polymarket. Download the app today with our exclusive code CHAT at chatsports.com/Polymarket for exclusive early access and $10 free. Now we shift our focus to some conflicting reports as to just how the Kliff Kingsbury firing went down here in Washington. A report from ESPN's John Keim here, where he claims that the disconnect between the Washington Commanders and Kliff Kingsbury was actually coming from head coach Dan Quinn, not Adam Peters like it was being reported by Diana Rossini and others. According to Keim, Dan Quinn wants to run the football more, and Kliff wanted to kind of run his air raid, heavy shotgun spread, pistol style offense and continue to do that with quarterback Jaden Daniels. There's a disagreement as to how this team should move forward from a philosophical standpoint on offense, leading to Kingsbury and Quinn deciding to mutually part ways. But there is definitely conflicting reports on this here, as Jordan Schultz tweeted today and reported today that GM Adam Peters has been quote-unquote meddling with Washington's coaching staff, and he's been the one that's been driving the chains to more of a Shanahan-style offense like he ran and the Niners ran when he was there in San Francisco under head coach Kyle Shanahan. This was the report from Jordan Schultz earlier today saying sources, part of the issue the Commanders have had in the building is the front office meddling with the coaching staff on personnel and which players to use. An ongoing problem dating back to 2024 when they were having success. With the team struggling this year, it reached new heights and there were notable disagreements. Moreover, I have not gotten the impression Dan Quinn wanted to move on from his coordinators. The entire disconnect is one to watch as we head into 2026. Quote, there's a lot of shit going on there, a source said. So guys, this is a pretty darn concerning report, and personally, I kind of tend to lean towards believing Jordan Schultz, who doesn't have a dog in this fight, as opposed to a guy like John Keim, who might probably gets a lot of sourcing from within the Commanders building, and doesn't want to lose those sources. So he might be a little bit more of a mouthpiece for the team itself and for them to get their narratives out there. But if true, man, Adam Peters and this front office need to take a step back. All right, I truly believe that. The front office is not supposed to be managing the football team. The head coach and the coaching staff should be doing personnel decisions, who's playing, who's not playing, all that different stuff. I understand there might be some frustrations because if you spend a high draft pick on somebody and they're not getting opportunities, then it's like, well, why did we draft this player where we did if we're not going to use them? But at the end of the day, man, the best organizations allow, the coaching staff and the head coach to make those decisions, and they don't meddle with the coaching staff, and, they stay in their lane, so to speak. And it seems like Peters and his front office, at least if you believe Schultz's report, are not doing that. The fact that this report is getting out there tells me that there's some people in the Commanders coaching staff that isn't too happy about the involvement the front office has in personnel decisions. Now, there could be two possible rifts here between, Kliff Kingsbury and Adam Peters or Dan Quinn, and number one is that the front office wants an offense that resembles the 49ers, all right? And, this makes sense. Adam Peters is coming over from the 49ers where they had a ton of success offensively with Kyle Shanahan as their head coach. Most really successful offenses in this league run a lot of under center and play action and are inspired directly by Kyle Shanahan's offense. And then number two, coaches, weren't playing certain high draft picks consistently. Guys like Ben Sinnott, for example, who wasn't getting a ton of opportunities these first 2 years. I'm sure the front office is like, hey, we spent a high draft pick on this guy. Use him a little bit more. And, it can definitely lead to some conflicts of, from the offensive coordinator and the head coach deciding which players to play, certain stuff like that. And then also from a philosophical standpoint, if you want to run more under center, more run game, stuff like that, and then your offensive coordinator wants to run a lot of spread, a lot of shotgun, a lot of pistol, that sort of stuff, it just seemed like something where there was two different visions for the Commanders offense and somebody had to lose, and it ended up being Kingsbury. But honestly, man, Kimes' report sounded a little bit more like a team-led narrative. That kind of sounded more like, somebody in Josh Harris or Adam Peters' office contacting Kime and saying this is the way it went down. It was Dan Quinn's decision to move on from Kliff Kingsbury. But Schultz, coming out with a conflicting report tells me that I actually I believe Schultz a little bit more because he doesn't really have a dog in this fight. Schultz also reported this yesterday in terms of how the Commanders players reacted to Kingsbury's firing. He says, sources, my understanding is that key Commanders offensive players, including quarterback Jaden Daniels, are disappointed with the team's decision to part ways with OC Kliff Kingsbury. Daniels vouched for him to stay in his presser on Monday and was among those blindsided by the move. Offensive players on the team figured the only way Kingsbury would be gone is if he got a head coaching job. And listen, man, pissing your franchise quarterback off is always a great strategy, right? No, it's usually a way to, only piss him off more, especially if the new coordinator that comes in, runs an offense that Jaden isn't comfortable in. And by the way, the new offense is likely to be an under center heavy, play action heavy, Shanahan style offense, something that Jaden Daniels has literally never run in his playing career. And, if he liked Kliff's offense, and he did, and now you're switching to something that he's going to be, completely new at and might have some frustrations with next year, this could turn into a pretty explosive situation here if, things don't work out. And I really hope it doesn't get to the point where Jaden wants out here in Washington. But, this is the type of first step kind of move that, starts to deteriorate a relationship between a franchise quarterback and the team. And personally, I agree with the players. You guys know, if you watched our video on the breaking news yesterday, I personally would have brought back Kliff Kingsbury for one more year. I didn't think that he was the one responsible for, the downfall of the offense this year. And honestly, they were league average in most offensive categories this year with their star franchise quarterback out for more than half the games. Their number one receiver, Terry McLaurin, out for nearly half the games as well. I thought Kliff and his play calling was some of the best stuff the Commanders had on offense this year. And put in lesser hands, I think this offense could have been one of the worst in football, and it wasn't that here in 2025, and I would have given him one more chance. And Monday, Adam Peters and Dan Quinn took the podium to discuss what the plan is going to be from a roster construction standpoint here in 2026, and there were some noteworthy things that I want to share with you guys. We'll start here with what Peters wants in terms of team building philosophy, which is to get younger and faster. All right, that is what Adam Peters wants. Is he wants to get younger and faster in the year to come here, and that is exactly what we want here in Washington. Right, last year this team was just too old and too slow. It does seem like that they have identified that as a problem, and with all the free agents set to hit the market this offseason and likely a complete roster overhaul coming, at least it's a good news that Peters and Quinn have identified that this team needs to get younger in the year to come. Also, it sounds like a key lesson that Adam Peters took from this past year is to get some contracts and some extensions done sooner rather than later and pay a hefty price for it. And, we've been talking, all season long how the Terry McLaurin situation was detrimental to the Washington Commanders this season. And, of course, Terry misses 7 games this year, and that's not ideal. But also him not attending training camp and practicing during that time was also a big deal as well. And Adam Peters said during his press conference yesterday that the McLaurin situation taught him to finalize extensions earlier and then in in particular, he says that he wants to get Laremy Tunsil's extension done sooner rather than later. And by the way, that is the correct strategy, all right? If a bunch of other offensive tackles get massive deals throughout the course of the offseason, that means the price tag for Laremy Tunsil on that extension is only going to go up from there. So to get a deal done with Tunsil as soon as possible is the correct strategy and the right mindset, in my opinion. And I'm hoping we get news of a Tunsil extension very soon. But also, Peter said another area of focus is going to be to add a quote-unquote pass rusher on the edge. And, I think that this is once again something that this team should focus on. Dietrich Wise, who just had that massive quad injury, he's going to be a free agent. Don't think the team is going to be bringing him back. They might bring back Von Miller as like a rotational guy, but I doubt they'll give him a starting role. Dorrance Armstrong does have another year left on his deal, so I do think they will bring him back after his injury this year, but they need somebody to play on the other side of him. If they want to go free agency, they've got some options. Trey Hendrickson, who they were interested in via trade this past offseason, will be a free agent. He will be an expensive one, but he's somebody that they could consider because they will have a lot of they will have a lot of cap space to work with this season. Khalil Mack, an older edge rusher that you could think about bringing in. If you want to go with the younger and faster guys, I would say Mack is probably not going to be in consideration. Probably same thing goes for Joey Bosa, and then Hassan Reddick and Dante Fowler Jr. are some other guys that you can think about in free agency, especially because Fowler 2 years ago had double-digit sacks in this defense led by Dan Quinn. But honestly, I think probably the more likely scenario, guys, is that they might get somebody in the draft to get, again, with the younger and faster theme here of this offseason. These are the top 5 edge prospects in this year's class according to the consensus big board. Personally, I'm a David Bailey guy. I think he's the best guy in this class, but Reuben Bain Jr. Is also a guy that's really highly touted out of Miami. Keldrick Falk, bigger edge rusher that might be more of the Commanders' size and profile to keep your eye on. And then Cassius Howell and TJ Parker, some other guys that are going to be highly touted this year. So when it comes to adding an edge rusher this year, guys, which do you prefer? Do you want to go out and get a veteran in free agency, or would you rather draft one early to pair with Dorrance Armstrong for the future? Type FA if you want free agent, or type D if you want to draft a high-end edge rusher in this year's class. Now, before I go, guys, I do have some final items that I want to discuss with you guys real quickly. The first one is that Austin Eckler likely is not going to be coming back to the Commanders next year, as he has officially said his goodbye to Washington on Instagram. Putting up a picture of him scoring a touchdown in a Commanders uniform and then having this message for Commanders Nation. Some of my most memorable years playing this sport. Thanks, DMV. Thanks, Commander Nation. Hail to the Commanders. So Eckler saying goodbye. I'm guessing he may retire. We'll see if he wants to play more. But if he plays more, it seems like the team has made it clear to him that he will not be returning to the DMV. But now also the Baltimore Ravens have fired head coach John Harbaugh. That was the shocking news in the NFL yesterday. Now, I might be saying at home, Jack, how does that apply to the Commanders? Well, it applies to the Commanders because he might be coming to the NFC East. The New York Giants are now the favorite to land John Harbaugh. Apparently, he is their number one guy on their list, and they are, quote-unquote, all in to try and get John Harbaugh. And according to some reporting, Harbaugh has a lot of interest in the New York Giants and has been doing his research now on Jackson Dart. And it seems like he's pretty interested in that job with guys like Jackson Dart, Malik Neighbors, Cam Scadaboo, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter. They've got a lot of young talent on that New York Giants roster. And it seems like we might be getting a Super Bowl champion and an 18-year head coaching veteran here in the NFC East to compete with in the years to come. Now, that'll be it for today's edition of Commanders News and Rumors. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already for daily and free updates all offseason long on the Burgundy and Gold. That'll be it for us today, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then, hail to the Commanders. First segment in the books, Mr. Ponzi. Coming up next, the 2025 Commie Awards, where we break down our choices for MVP, Offensive and Defensive Players of the Year, Offensive and Defensive Rookies of the Year, Coach of the Year, all these different categories. We're going to be giving some love to some Commanders players and coaches, even though, let's face it, this year has not been maybe award worthy, but we do want to, end this season off with some positivity, let's call it, okay? Because it hasn't been a very positive season. But we also have our mailbag coming up, guys. So if you want to get your question in, you guys can use hashtag Commanders in the live chat room, or you guys can super chat to get on today's Q&A. Any super chat, any question that comes with a super chat will automatically be added to the mailbag. Whereas if you just use hashtag Commanders, it's up to our producer Ponzi to decide whether or not your question is good enough. So maybe if you have a good question and you're really confident in it, use hashtag Commanders. If you're not so sure and you want to make sure it gets on there, you guys can super chat. We greatly appreciate your guys' support. So let's just dive right in here. Got over 140 people watching live around the world. Appreciate all of you guys for stopping by here on a Wednesday evening. We're about to get into some awards and some positivity to wrap up the 2025 Commander season. So without further ado, let's get to the commies. Welcome into the Commanders Report. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and today we are doing our annual Commie Awards. And obviously, this has not been a very positive season here with the Washington Commanders, but I wanted to kind of wrap up this season with a little bit of a positive bow, giving some love to some players and, going over the whole NFL awards slate, but, focusing in on the Washington Commanders here for the 2025 season. So before we dive into the awards and who we give this year's MVP to, make sure you guys kick us off down there in the comment section. What was the best memory that you will take away from the 2025 season? Or are you just forgetting this season altogether? All right, let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Is there any memory from this season that you will take with you into 2026 and beyond? Now, the most valuable player, and listen, man, if your most valuable player is an offensive lineman, things went really, really wrong this year, but Laremy Tunsil, I thought, was the most valuable player and certainly the most valuable addition for the Washington Commanders this year. The fact that you're getting this guy and you're likely going to lock him up to an extension that will make him, the blindside protector here in Washington for Jaden Daniels for many years to come, I think that was a good move. Now, you had to give up, multiple draft picks to go get him, and that's going to hurt your ability potentially to fill this roster up with young talent. But Tunsil had one of the best years of his career. I believe it was the highest PFF grade of his entire playing career, which is crazy because he's been one of the best pass protecting tackles for a long time now. An 84.7 PFF grade that was sixth among offensive tackles this year, left or right. So, this is a guy that had a really good season this year, kind of quietly because the Commanders obviously weren't very good, but he was fantastic. He was actually better as a run blocker than I thought he would be at this stage in his career, and he was obviously elite, like he always is, at protecting the quarterback. So, listen, man, the fact that our MVP is a left tackle is pretty sad. I wish I could sit up here and say it was Jaden Daniels like it was last year, and I wish that Jaden, who I predicted to be the MVP of the league before the season, was this team's MVP, obviously. But Tunsil was probably the best player on this team that stayed healthy for most of the season, so I'll give my MVP award to Tunsil. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Who is the MVP of the Commanders this season? Who is the best player and deserves that honor on this football team? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'll tell you about our sponsor today at Polymarket. While I tell you about our sponsor today, let me know who the Commanders MVP was this year. It's time to challenge the status quo, and Polymarket is now live to help us do so. You can be a part of the revolutionary alternative to sportsbooks with our special invite code. Download Polymarket's new app now via the special link that is in the description and comments to unlock exclusive early access and a free $10 in your account with the invite code chat. Polymarket is a prediction marketplace that lets you make trades on the outcomes of sporting events. And as you guys can see on screen right here, you can even buy and sell within a game with live trading. Polymarket has the lowest fees ever. You trade against other people, not the platform, and you can cash out anytime and react to momentum swings within the game. You are in control. It's legal and available nationwide in all 50 states on their iOS app right now. For this weekend's wildcard action between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Houston Texans, the Houston Texans are got 59% here, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are at 42%. 50%, which makes sense because the Houston Texans have won 9 straight games, and the Pittsburgh Steelers don't exactly have the most dynamic offense going up against the league's best defense. $10 free is waiting for you. No card, no deposit, nothing right now with Polymarket. Download the app today with our exclusive code CHAT at chatsports.com/Polymarket for exclusive early access and $10 free. All right, we're on to our next category here, which is Offensive Player of the Year. And this one was tough because, Deebo Samuel didn't have like a fantastic season this year, but he was the receiver on this team that was consistently available. And, he didn't have like an absolutely terrible season for the Washington Commanders this year. And kind of by default, he ends up winning this award. He only missed 1 game this year. And then in the 16 games he did play, he averaged a first down per reception. He had over 800 yards total this year, had 6 total touchdowns. So, I don't think that this was really the season that Deebo was hoping for when he got traded to the Washington Commanders. But I think that, the narrative surrounding Deebo has been a little bit unfair, saying he sucks, he's terrible, all this different stuff. I think Deebo's still a pretty okay player, and I think he's still a valuable piece in a rotation. But for much of the season, he was expected to step up as the number 1 option in the offense, and that's just not what he's capable of being at this point in his career. And the big question surrounding Deebo is now that he's a free agent, will he be back in 2026? And personally, my take on it is that if he wants a lot of money, if he wants a multi-year deal, I'm letting him go somewhere else to take that, okay? But if he wants to come back on a short-term deal, likely another 1-year deal, as this team's wide receiver 3 and be a gadget piece for this offense, especially in a Shanahan-style offense that he has thrived in the past, I think you could do a lot worse than Deebo Samuel and bringing him back. And I think that that's actually a somewhat realistic possibility at this stage in his career, especially if the Commanders bring in a guy like one of his best friends, Brandon Ayuk, who was his tag team partner there in San Francisco for many years. I could certainly see Deebo coming back for another season here in Washington and taking a pretty decent hometown discount at that. Now we move on to Defensive Player of the Year, and I'll give this one to Daron Payne. Now, Payne missed a couple games this year, one due to a suspension, but I thought Payne had a really good season overall. I thought on film he was pretty darn disruptive. He ended up with 3 sacks and 7 TFLs. He was getting after quarterbacks while also holding the line of scrimmage in the run game pretty darn well. Taking on double teams is always something that he's done at a pretty darn good rate. And, after a couple seasons of kind of disappointing play, this was, kind of a little bit of another breakout season for Daron as he's looking for probably a contract extension this offseason. Now, are the Commanders going to want to pay, a nearly 30-year-old player big-time money at this position, especially when in 2 of the last 3 recent seasons he's been kind of disappointing? I don't know. I think that Payne honestly might be a surprise trade candidate this year for the Commanders, where maybe if someone offers a 2nd or 3rd round pick for Payne's services, certainly that could be a possibility for the Commanders to get younger and faster, like Adam Peters has said that he wants to get this offseason. But in terms of this season, I think Payne was the most consistent and best defensive player on the Washington Commanders this year. Then for Offensive Rookie of the Year, and I actually considered giving Bill Krosky-Merritt the Offensive Player of the Year award as well, but I gave that one to Deebo because there really wasn't another offensive rookie that I thought was deserving of the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. And I thought Bill, was very explosive, very efficient in his first season. Now, he still has things to work on. He needs to get a lot better at pass protection. He needs to do better as a receiving option for this team. But just on the ground, he had over 800 yards. He averaged over 4.5 yards a carry. That is super efficient. And it's not like he barely touched the ball. Like, he still had, over 150 carries. So, on a pretty decent workload, he was really efficient, had 8 touchdowns. He won multiple NFL Rookie of the Week awards this year. And I think that he is definitely a big part of this team's future. And I think he's a big reason why this team wants to shift to more of a Shanahan-style offense, because they want him to really they really want to use his talents as that true number 1 running back, finding those cutback lanes, all those different things, and set him up for success. So I'm excited to see what Bill Krosky-Merritt's future is here in Washington after a really good rookie campaign. Then obviously the Defensive Rookie of the Year is going to go to Trey Amos, who I think locked himself in as this team's number 1 outside corner of the future. Obviously it was cut too short with an injury, but I think what he put on film this year was really, really good, and I think he's going to be able to come back at his age and kind of pick up where he left us here in 2025. Really excited about this young man's future. And we get the comeback player of the year, and according to the NFL rulebook, when it comes to this particular award, you have to be coming off an injury. And out of all the players that were coming off an injury this season, Sam Cosmi, who worked his butt off to get back as soon as he possibly could after that torn ACL he suffered in the playoffs last year. And when he came back, man, he was Sam Cosmi. He was awesome. He took a little bit to warm up, but by the time, his season was over with a concussion and he was put on IR, he was kicking ass, man. He's still, the best, well, maybe not now with Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, but he's still one of, if not the best, offensive lineman on the Commanders right now. And he's not going anywhere anytime soon. When it comes to coach of the year, obviously it was a complete coaching failure from head coach to both coordinator spots, especially because both of the coordinators are now fired, so I can't give it to any of those guys. So I'm going to give it to the guy that, actually, elevated his status in the coaching world and became a head coach, and that's Tavita Pritchard, the former quarterback coach here in Washington. He got hired by Andrew Luck in the Stanford Cardinal. He is now their head coach. So big shout out to Tavita for getting that job. And that's about the only positive thing I can say about the coaching here in Washington this year. And then the play of the year, I got to give it to Treylon Burks with that incredible one-handed catch. That is definitely the moment of the year. And to answer the question I posed to you guys at the beginning of the show, this is the moment I'm going to take from this season, and that's going to be the thing that I remember, because that was one of the craziest catches I've ever seen. I couldn't believe it when I saw it when we were live here on the show when it happened on the watch party, and that's definitely going to be a moment I'm not going to forget very soon. So you make the call for me down there in the comments section. Should Washington bring back Treylon Burks next year? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. I think if they do, it'll be more of like a wide receiver 4 rotational type of role, but I'm certainly open to bringing Burks back in that capacity. If you're asking him to be wide receiver 2 or even wide receiver 3 next year, I'm probably not as interested in that. But as a depth wide receiver on a low-cost contract, I would certainly bring back Treylon Burks for another season. And then we'll finish up here with the Man of the Year award, and we're going to go with Bobby Wagner here. And Bobby, not only, became the third defensive player in NFL history to collect over 2,000 tackles, joining London Fletcher and Ray Lewis as the only players to get to that milestone. But he's also the Man of the Year nominee for the Washington Commanders this year because of all the charitable work that he does. He's helped this organization, instill Dan Quinn's culture. And obviously, we've been very critical of Bobby Wagner here on this show all season long for the way he played on the field, and for good reason. Like, he can't change directions anymore. He's not fast. I don't believe he's an NFL caliber player anymore. But, as he's probably heading towards retirement here, just want to give a little bit of a tribute here to Bobby Wagner, who's been a leader in this locker room, who has been an impact player, at least he was in 2024, at inside linebacker for this team, and one of the best linebackers in NFL history. Certainly deserves some love from us here in Commanders Nation. All right, that'll be it for this year's Commie Awards. I really do appreciate you guys sticking with me here. I know it wasn't a very positive season this year in Washington, but, after such a negative season, I just wanted to put a bow on the 2025 campaign with some positivity. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. And, of course, we're going to have extensive 2026 offseason coverage as we approach a huge 2026 Washington Commanders campaign. So make sure you click that subscribe button and never miss a moment. Until next time, guys, go raise some hail. All right, man, we got one more show to go here. Again, it's not too late to get your questions on the show. How are we doing on questions, Ponzi? Okay. So you guys have 3 minutes to get your questions in if you haven't gotten your questions in yet. Want to give you one last chance to get your question in if you want to get one in and you haven't yet. Again, every Super Chat question is automatically included on the mailbag. So if you want to guarantee that that question's on, make sure you Super Chat. Okay. So what did you think there, Ponzi? What do you think about Deebo Samuel? I think that's one of the more interesting questions heading into the offseason is, if you can get him on a team-friendly deal, does it make sense to bring him back?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially if you're going to go with a Shanahan hire, he would know the offense. He would know especially if you're going to hire from the 49ers, he would know what to do, the checks. I think that would make a lot of sense just because, he's kind of that gadget receiver, and you can, line him up in the backfield. He is a tool, and he is a weapon, as he showed this year. And also, he recorded, his fastest time? in
he got up to over 20 miles per hour on a play this year, so he's still got some juice left in the tank.
I don't think he's like washed or anything. I just think the Commanders obviously were using him in a wide receiver 1 role when he's supposed to be a gadget piece.
Yeah.
If he resigns for, a decent deal, nothing near Terry McLaurin's deal, but like a good deal, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I would also understand letting him walk and just trying to get like Traylon Burks for cheaper.
Yeah, I completely agree. Especially if, like you said, if you bring in a Shanahan style offense, like it looks like that they're going to do, having that familiarity with those concepts and with that verbiage, etc., I think would be a positive. Plus, I think he'd be one of the best wide receiver 3s in the game. Yeah. I think as a wide receiver 2, I just don't think you can trust him to be that anymore, because if your number 1 guy goes down, Debo's not a good enough route runner to be a number 1.
Yeah.
So, I think the Commanders have to get another wide receiver. It's probably going to be Ayuk. I'm just going to say it right now. I think they're going to get Ayuk. And then I think if they can get Debo back on the roster for a team-friendly deal, which, by the way, they might be able to, okay? He's got a good relationship with Jaden and Terry. And, if they bring in somebody that he knows from the Shanahan offense to be the new OC here, and they bring in his buddy Brandon Ayuk, this might be the place that he wants to go. And he might be willing to take a little bit of a discount to be a wide receiver 3 in this offense. If you have, on paper, I know it's not a very young group, which a lot of Commanders fans want, but Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, and Debo Samuel is a very talented wide receiver trio here in Washington. And then maybe you bring back Traylon Burks as wide receiver 4. That's a pretty decent rotation there, if you ask me.
Yeah, I feel like, it definitely would scream, and a lot of memes would happen of 49ers, retirement home, just because, Brandon Ayuk and Debo Samuel, especially if you bring in a 49ers QB coach. But I think that wide receiver 4 rotation of Debo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Traylon Burks, and then Brandon Ayuk, I mean, that does pose an offensive threat. Hopefully Brandon Ayuk is okay. That injury looks severe. Yeah, apparently it's really messy.
Hopefully he behaves.
Yeah, that too. I mean, going 100 right past Levi Stadium and,
in a 40.
Yeah. So,
doubling the speed limit, over doubling it.
I mean, I feel like, those character concerns are very much with Brandon Ayuk, even the health concerns. So, it's going to have to be a prove-it deal for me. It's going to have to be a 1-year contract.
Or if they give him multiple years, it can only be 1 year of guaranteed money.
Yeah, so that way if he crashes out,
you can cut him for no dead money in future years.
And, I do worry about that rubbing off on Jaden a little bit.
But it's going to anyway, because they're best friends, and you can't tell somebody you can't be friends with somebody. So if anything, if Jaden wants Brandon Ayuk and he's going to want Brandon Ayuk, and then you tell him no, he's going to be even more pissed at the organization. He's already pissed that Kliff is gone. Do you really want to risk pissing him off more by not signing his friend?
And, one of those other players that's, come up is Rachaad White, because, he recently changed his Twitter profile to him and Jaden.
Yeah, I'm guessing
he's a free agent too. So, he would probably be, the rotation probably is going to be, Rachaad White, Bill Krosky-Merritt in your running back room. Maybe they get a tight end. In the draft or in free agency.
I think they will, or maybe they just force somebody that will use Ben Sinnott.
Yeah,
because I have a feeling that was part of the rift between Kliff and the front office. Is that the front office is we spent a high draft pick on this Sinnott guy, and you never use him.
And he's shown flashes.
Yeah, and he has shown flashes. So I'm open to giving Sinnott, an opportunity to prove himself. It would just be a big question mark, because obviously the tight end position is a big deal in Shanahan offenses. And if Sinnott's not good, then we wouldn't have a whole lot of options left there.
Yeah, and I feel like, if you're going to rock with Sinnott, you're going to have to get some competition in there.
Yeah. I mean, John Bates, they signed to an extension last year, and he's been their blocking tight end. He's not much of a receiver other than, he's got okay hands, but I do think they'll probably add at least one more tight end to the roster this year, whether that be at the draft, whether that be in free agency. We'll just have to see as the offseason unfolds, but it's definitely going to be an adventure, guys. All right, let's kick off the offseason with our first mailbag of the 2026 offseason here, guys. I hope you guys got some good questions for me. Let's get into it right now with this week's mailbag. It's the first Commanders mailbag of the 2026 offseason, and today I'm going to be answering your questions as the Washington Commanders offseason is now in full swing. Before we get into your questions today, make sure you guys subscribe to join the most interactive Commanders fan community anywhere here on YouTube. We go live every single Wednesday here on the channel during the offseason, and of course we'll have breaking news coverage when the Commanders hire an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator whenever they make big moves during the offseason. We try to be as interactive as possible with you guys, including taking your questions on a weekly mailbag show, just like we're doing today. So if you guys want to join the community of nearly 50,000 Commanders fans that bleed burgundy and gold and come share the daily and free content we have on the Commanders every single day, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Got one from Raise Tech 25, $10 super chat, says, how can the Commanders gain magic like 2024? If the Commanders sign Dante Fowler and Trey Henderson, is the defense going to be great? Well, you also have to remember Dorrance Armstrong's coming back next year. So Dorrance is going to be a starter for us next year. I mean, unless his knee injury is so bad, he's not going to be able to get back next year, but I don't think that'll be the case. I think he'll be one of our starters next year. So I don't think they'll get Fowler and Henderson unless Fowler's coming in to play a rotational role. And then Hendrickson is going to be really, really expensive. Now, the Commanders have the money to do it. They got, with the Marshawn Lattimore cut that's coming up here, they're going to have, over $100 million again to spend in free agency. But, Henderson's going to, he's going to be, upwards of close to $40 million per season. So it's like, do you want to spend most of your money this year on one player on a roster that needs a complete overhaul? I don't know if that makes a ton of sense. Honestly, I think probably the more likely scenarios, they spend a high draft pick going to get an edge rusher, whether that's a trade down in round one and then take a David Bailey or a Reuben Bain or Keldrick Falk, somebody like that. That's certainly possible, but, it's going to be interesting to see what they do at the edge rusher position. In terms of how they get the magic back like they had in 2024, the answer to me is simple. Keep Jaden Daniels healthy and make him comfortable. Give him some help. And, it looks like they're going to change offensive schemes and philosophies this year, which concerns me a little bit. Because Jaden's going to have to learn a brand new offense with new players and all this different stuff, and that could lead to some growing pains next year. But, if you can get Jaden Daniels to be fully healthy next year, you give him a full offseason and full training camp with Terry McLaurin and some new weapons in the wide receiver room, I think that this offense could be rolling by the end of the season and hopefully go on another special run like in 2024. Another one here from Raise Tech who says, what players will the Commanders sign either in free agency or the draft? I can't tell you that, Raise Tech. Nobody is going to be able to accurately tell you all the players that they're going to add this offseason, but they have a bunch of needs all over the place on both sides of the football that they need to address. And with the philosophy changes on both offense and defense coming our way, that allows a great opportunity to build this roster in the image of those new philosophical visions that the Commanders have for this team moving forward, because they have to replace like at least half of their roster from this year. Like that is the situation that we're in right now, where you got a lot of free agents, you got a lot of players that you're likely going to be cutting this offseason as well. So this is going to be a complete roster overhaul. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see which players they bring in. Then we got Mike Nintendo Master, my man, says, who is a good option to replace Kliff Kingsbury? In the Shanahan tree, there's a lot of good options. Clay Kubiak, who's currently the OC there in San Francisco, Brian Greasy, Chris Forster, some other assistants on the offensive side of the ball there in San Francisco. There's also some guys in the Miami building that makes sense. If they decide to move off of Mike McDaniel, that would be maybe my number one choice, but Frank Smith and Darrell Bevel are two assistants there that would make a lot of sense to me. Grant Udinsky is a Sean McVay guy, but he is currently the OC in Jacksonville under Liam Cohen. He might want to jump ship here because he doesn't have any play calling responsibilities there in Jacksonville. He would have those responsibilities here in Washington. So, that's a pretty good list to start with right there, Mike. It certainly is going to be interesting to see who they bring in. My guess is, though, they're going to be bringing in a Shanahan guy in the weeks to come. So we'll see who they end up bringing in. So what say you guys? Was firing Kliff Kingsbury the correct call for the Washington Commanders? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section to give me your opinion. Just a second here. I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today. While I tell you about our sponsor, simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comments. And with that, let's have word from our sponsor today, where you guys can go to our link here and to our website, chatsports.com/Daniels, to pick yourself up a Jaden Daniels Commanders jersey today. If you believe in JD like I do, if you believe that he is going to be the next Commanders quarterback to win a Super Bowl for this franchise, make sure you guys go chatsports.com/Daniels, make a purchase, because not only do you guys get a Jaden Daniels jersey at a great price, but also you help out the channel. Every single purchase that is made goes towards or part of the proceeds go back to us here at the Commanders Report. So if you want to help us keep this content free every single day here on YouTube, and you want to get a Jaden Daniels jersey that you can likely wear the rest of your life as a Washington Commanders fan, go chatsports.com/Daniels to make it happen today. $2 from Light says, do you like Monken or Slowick? And Patricia or Gannon. So between those two options, if I'm choosing between Monken and Slowick, this might surprise some people because Slowick did not do very well in Houston, but I would say Slowick, and I think the Commanders would rather take Slowick than Monken. The reason for that is Monken is very much kind of in the realm of like a Kliff Kingsbury type of guy. Lots of shotgun, lots of spread. There's been moments where Monken has been criticized for not running the football enough with Derrick Henry, for example. It's one of the reasons why, ownership there in Baltimore wanted Monken gone, is because he didn't consistently feed Derrick Henry enough. And it sounds like that was one of the main things between Kliff and DQ and Adam Peters, is that Kliff didn't want to run the football as much. Whereas Slowick would actually be a Shanahan guy. He comes from, that world, and, he would run the offense that DQ and Adam Peters would want. So I think Slowick, in that question, I think Monken's a better play caller, but I think Slowick is more of what they're looking for. In terms of Patricia and Gannon, if I had a choice between those two, I'd probably go with Gannon, honestly. He's a pretty decent defensive coordinator. He runs a very modern defense. Don't think he's a head coach guy, but I think Gannon has a very interesting defense with a lot of interesting blitz packages that I think that this Commanders team could certainly use moving forward. So make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you are a real one, if you watch our show every single day, you love the Washington Commanders, we'd greatly appreciate it if you help out our channel today by clicking that thumbs up icon. Then we got one from Hype Spectre here. He says, wondering what type of DC will be hired and whether that choice would lead to a materially different scheme or just a new play caller for DQs. It kind of depends on if DQ goes with one of the guys that he's worked with before, or if he goes with somebody different. Like if they bring in like a Jonathan Gannon, for example, he typically runs a pretty different defense to what Dan Quinn usually runs. But if he brings in a guy like Raheem Morris, who has been a defensive coordinator before under DQ, then I think the defense looks pretty similar. Obviously Dan was brought in here as a defensive mind, so I think that he kind of feels part of the onus to come up with the defensive vision and the philosophy. So if I had to guess Hype, I'm guessing this defense from a schematic standpoint looks somewhat similar next year, but maybe they do bring in somebody with some new ideas. It just kind of depends on who they end up hiring. In terms of a prediction of who they bring in, I would say Raheem Morris is a pretty good bet. Jeff Ulbrich is a name that could be brought in as well. Also look out for Gus Bradley, Al Harris. Guys with connections to Dan Quinn are probably the people that are most likely going to get the nod. Then we got one from Uncle Ruckus. Says, do you think we should shop Daron Payne and clean house on our D-line and start our young guys like Newton? Well, Newton showed up at the end of the season, specifically in the Cowboy game. I think he had like 3 sacks in that game. Like, he was absolutely unreal. So he certainly showed some promise there at the end. The thing with Daron is that he's going to probably want a new contract. He's only got 1 year left, and he's coming off a good season. So when that happens, players usually want to get paid. And the question that the Commanders are going to have to ask themselves is he worth the money over the next several years? Because he's going to be, past the age of 30 when that next contract is up. So, you have to ask that question. Is he more valuable to the team by extending him and keeping him? Or is he more valuable to the team by trading him away for like a 2nd or 3rd round pick? I think that's going to be an interesting discussion to be had this offseason. And frankly, if I had to guess right now, I think he gets traded. I really do. So you be the GM for me down there in the comment section. What are you doing with Daron Payne? Type T if you would trade him, or type P if you would give him an extension. I can almost guarantee you he's going to want an extension. You can't just keep him on the roster on the figure that he's at right now. If you want him on the roster next year, you're going to have to pay him and lock him up long term. If you don't want to do that, type T. If you do want to do that, type P. That'll be it for this week's mailbag, guys. Thank you so much for all the great questions this week. Of course, we do this mailbag every single week on our live show on Wednesday afternoon. So if you guys want to get a question on a future edition of the Commanders Report mailbag, click that subscribe button and join us on Wednesdays. All right, so we got some super chats here. Moby Munoz says, how come you guys weren't live for Week 18? We had some other responsibilities here at Chat Sports, and unfortunately a game in which the Philadelphia Eagles weren't playing their starters, and the Commander season was over, wasn't at the top of the priority list. We've only got a limited amount of studios here, Moby. We only have a certain amount of resources, and certain channels and certain things like that, take priority in certain games. And frankly, the Commanders and Eagles game just wasn't like a super, in terms of playoffs and all these huge games that were going on, it just wasn't a top priority, unfortunately.
It did have some relevancy in the NFC seeding, though.
Yeah. I guess it did, but
because if the Eagles won that game, they were the 2 seed. And they would have played the Packers.
That's true.
But,
That's true.
I think they kind of got... I don't know about the Packers and 49ers disparity. I think they're both talented teams, but, I think the Packers is the better draw there. I think the 49ers could upset them, and obviously we're kind of rooting for the 49ers.
Yeah.
But, if the Commanders lost, they would have picked that 4th.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, man, we are going to be. We haven't done a live show during the week since the week that Jaden got injured, because the season was over at that point. So we kind of spent some of our time resources elsewhere for the channel. But now that we're back on the off-season grind here, we'll be back live every single Wednesday, guys. So make sure you turn on those notifications, because we will be going live every single week this off-season to talk about all the moves the Commanders are making, to talk about everything going on with the burgundy and gold. It's going to be a huge off-season, Ponzi. We're going to be doing a video here pretty soon breaking down all the players that are on the roster in 2026, and there's not many. There's less than there's less than 30 players on the current roster that are currently slated to be on the team, and then that's not even counting all the guys that are going to get cut from this team this year. So there's going to be a complete roster overhaul. This roster is going to look very different next year, especially on the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion, in 2026. So you're not going to want to miss any of that, guys. Make sure you click that subscribe button. $2 from Light says, will Bailey be as disappointing as Mike Green? I don't think so. And I don't think so either. And honestly, Mike Green showed some promise this year. I don't think he was as impactful day one as maybe Baltimore was hoping for, but I just still think he's got a very bright future.
And, I think he's got a really good toolkit for him to develop. I just think, the Ravens kind of were in the midst of chaos themselves. I think Green showed flashes. Listen, how many sacks did he have? I know he didn't have a lot. Let's see. He had 3.5 sacks during the regular season. And that's not...
It's not great. That was not what was expected from him.
David Bailey, if you watch that, the Orange Bowl... it was
some of the best film you'll see from an edge rusher anywhere this year. And I haven't really gotten into my film study yet on edge rushers. I've done some on the quarterbacks, and I always do quarterbacks first. But edge rushers are close to the top of the list. I was watching Dante Moore in that game, and I was like, oh my gosh, David Bailey is killing this team. David Bailey is just an insane player. He's probably going to end up being my number one edge this year. So if the Commanders can get him, and he's typically not the type of guy the Commanders usually like. They tend to like bigger defensive ends, and Bailey is more of an undersized, true pass rusher as an outside linebacker type almost. And I think the Commanders would have to change things up a little bit schematically if they want to go with a guy like David Bailey, but he's probably just the best pure pass rusher in the draft. So if that's the guy that you're looking to add to this defense, then by all means, go with David Bailey.
I mean, one of those things, I watched every Texas A&M game this season, and like he is undersized. I will say that. His run defense isn't the best, although it is solid. It's not like he's terrible during the run. And I mean, if you looked at that game, he was able to get up in the air, block passes from Dante Moore. He was causing havoc almost every passing play, even with help. I mean, it's one of those things where David Bailey is a true wrecker in the pass game. And if he could develop his run game a little bit better, he is undersized, but like you're talking about an edge who could clearly cause some havoc at the NFL level. So I don't think like Mike Green is a fair comparison to him at all.
I mean, I love Green coming out. I honestly think that their skill sets coming out pretty similar. But David is just holy cow, man. His tape against the top level competition is something that Green didn't have because he was at Marshall and he didn't play against a whole lot of top end competition. So, Bailey is certainly going to be. Honestly, he might not even get to the Commanders at 7. He's that good. So,
and I think obviously, if he does fall, it's going to be the size. That's going to be like what makes him fall.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of teams run these kind of lighter, kind of pass rush focused type of teams on defense. So I guess you never know what team might really, really want him. Is that it for the Super Chats? All right, man, that'll be it for our live show here on the first week of the NFL offseason. We'll be back next week to talk about the latest surrounding the Washington Commanders. And don't forget, we'll have videos go out every single day this week here on the Commanders Report with all the latest news and rumors. So if you don't want to miss any of that, click that subscribe button. Until next time, guys, hail to the Commanders.